Good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon to all the audience members. Good afternoon to the eminent speakers. Good afternoon to those who could not join us. I'm sure their patronage is with us. So good afternoon to everyone here. And, on behalf of mjunction, we welcome you all. This is the 11th webinar in our series, which we call Unlocking Value. Okay. And the topic that we have today is redefining procurement focus, optimized efficiency versus reduced cost. You may find that, in my backdrop also written. So it is redefining procurement focus, optimized efficiency versus reduced cost. Now, this topic actually urges us today to really discuss the procurement demands that are there in front of the procurement organizations today, that are there in front of the procurement managers today, and the factors or the triggers that are actually reshaping the procurement priorities as of today. And, we all will appreciate the fact that certain procurement dilemmas are as old as Stone Age. We always keep thinking, is it more important to get things in less time or in less cost? Is customer delight taking a backseat to low-cost sourcing? And we know managers daily striving to get things like the right material at the right price, at the right place, at the right time. Now the question is, which one is more right? Okay. Is L1 the only consideration for supplier selection and technical evaluations are a mere compliance? However, we appreciate that the things are changing, days are changing. Organizations in India and abroad are making procurement a value driver rather than only a cost center, and they have been asked to align to broader organizational tasks like looking after sustainability, searching for social responsibility, searching for risk reduction, searching for other sustainable advantages, data, etc. So now with all these thoughts in mind, we are here today to discuss this, and I'm sure our eminent speakers today, the three of us speakers, will discuss at length on all those perspectives. We are sure that they are going to dismiss all the dilemmas. They are going to give us food for the curious mind, and they're going to set perspectives, which from now on will lead to further clarity in our minds. So with that, let me introduce to all of you our speakers. We have three speakers today. Our first speaker is Mr. A. Preetham Kumar. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar is currently the Vice President Commercial at Kineta International. He has superannuated from NMDC in January 2019 as GM Materials. He is a mechanical engineer, and Mr. Kumar also has a master's degree in business management and foreign trade. His 4 decades of experience spans across automobiles, refrigeration, mining, which makes him a true leader in supply chain and materials. Now, that's not all. The other interesting part is Mr. Kumar has also been a state-level sportsman, and he's currently the Vice President of Telangana Handball Association. Am I right, Mr. Kumar?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I got the right ball. It's the handball, not volleyball. Okay. Okay. Yes. Thank you, and welcome, and thanks for joining us. Okay. So our next speaker has 3 decades of experience in supply chain strategy, planning, operations, and he is Mr. Srinivas Rachakonda.
Hello all.
Hi, welcome, sir. Mr. Srinivas is currently the CEO and director at E-Rising India Limited, a company that markets and manufactures mobility solutions and other consumer durable products. Prior to this, and it's interesting to know that he was also with a startup which had technologies digitizing supply chain operations. Even before that, he has been a hardcore telecom guy, having worked with brands like Idea, Tata Teleservices, Airtel, and you name it. Okay, he's an MBA in supply chain operations. And we must appreciate the fact that his contributions over the years have been recognized by the industry with awards like Supply Chain Personality of the Year Award and Supply Chain Exemplary Leader Award, both which he got in 2014. Am I right, Mr. Srinivas?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
Okay, congrats, sir. Congrats, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, with the third speaker, we have ensured that we get a right mix of perspectives, and that's why we have Mr. Karun Raj Singh Sareen from the consulting side. Mr. Sareen, I hope I got all. Mr. Sareen, I hope I got all the 4 words in your name in order and in correct fashion.
All the 4 names are perfect.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Sareen. So, okay. So, Mr. Sareen is now a partner in KPMG in their major projects advisory practice. He has 2 decades of experience in conceptualizing, bidding, and developing large scale, and I mean by large scale infrastructure projects. Currently at KPMG, he is leading a team of specialists who are into infra projects consulting, helping various stakeholders, advising them on planning, procurement, and managing various core infrastructure projects. He has 20 years of experience, which spans across brands like L&T, where he was involved in the material sector doing bidding for PPP projects. He was with BHEL, handling tendering and marketing functions. And nonetheless, he is a MTech from IIT Delhi and also has a postgraduate business management degree from SP Jain, Mumbai. Thank you, Mr. Sareen. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
It's our pleasure too, and I take this opportunity to welcome and thank all the 3 speakers again. Without wasting any more time, let me go and shoot the first question to our first speaker, Mr. Kumar. Sir. Mr. Kumar, with 4 decades of experience, I have to say that you have seen it all. You have seen it all. You have seen various trends evolving. You have seen, various dilemmas being challenged. You have seen expectations taking various shapes. So with that perspective, my question to you is, in recent years, what has been the most notable shifts or changes that you have noticed in procurement demands, and how have they impacted the priorities for a procurement organization or a procurement manager? And in continuation, the other part which I would like to ask you is that, sir, in your 40 years of experience, do you think savings is the only or the most important and uncompromising demand? Or are there other factors emerging which are gaining importance fast in achieving the long-term procurement goals? So these are my set of questions that we have for you, and over to you, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. And before, as I said, that I have superannuated from NMDC. Before I could start answering on the very specific notable points that changes that have taken place, I would like to give a small brief about NMDC. As you are all aware, NMDC is a Navaratna company of Government of India and public sector undertaking, and it is in the mining of iron ore and diamonds. And we produce almost 40 plus million tons of iron ore from the remotest places in the country. That is called Bailadila sector and Donimalai sector in Karnataka. Bailadila is in Chhattisgarh. We also have a turnover of almost 20,000 crore plus turnover this year, and it will be, the profit certainly is already in the 9 months, it has gone about 10,000 crores profit. But the thing, if you see history geography, it is because generally mines are in the remote areas, and it has started somewhere in 1958, and all things have keep on changing in this thing. And the beauty of the organization is only 5,000 people work in the total organization of 20,000 crores turnover. Maybe it is Mother Earth which has given such a beautiful ode to the country, and also we are giving all the materials to all the steel plants in the country and some parts of the world. First and foremost, it has started as a export-oriented unit, but now we are feeding the complete the end users in the India itself. And coming back to the mines which are there in the remote places, and naturally the procurement will always a challenge at every point and all the points of time. And the third thing is we have different kinds of mines. One is fully developed mine with the technical manpower. Second is developed mind, but without technical manpower or without not much of manpower. Third is virgin mind, wherein everything, even overburden is there. We have been allotted minds, but still we are not yet mined properly. This background is essential to see that how exactly the procurement function has to align with the other these things. And the major things that are being procured, it is materials management, procurement and management, supply management. It is all taking care as a challenge of service, more of a service rather than procuring like in any auto industry or something, parts in a regular basis. So the challenges will be to have the right kind of a spare at the right time for all the OEM equipments. Basically, we will have dumpers, shovels, dozers, graders, drills, and all these things, apart from other auxiliary equipment. And all these equipments will have a long lead time of not only supply for the equipment, for as well as for the major parts, which will go into that. And if you see, the other major consumable items are conveyor belts, tachometer bits, OTR tires, and other consumables like petrol, diesel, and other lubricant. These are the major junk of items which we procure. See, if you see before we come to the shifts in the notable points, the thing is we used to procure the material equipment and then use it for the mining operations and procure the space as per the design or plan or this experience of the engineers or this. It so happened that in the past that lot of spares were procured but not consumed because those spares were not, somehow it has not come for maintenance. And when an equipment is breakdown under breakdown, the item which is required for us was not available. Stock out position was there. This has led to non-production because the equipment itself is under breakdown and we are unable to produce. So the thing has come now that there is a change in the how exactly to tackle such kind of a challenge has come up. Then after due deliberations, the notable changes which have come into procurement area are whenever we procure equipment of required for mining operations, we thought that let us not take all the blame of giving spares at a time when it is required. Instead, we started debating with all the OEM manufacturers, and we have evolved a procedure in a public sector company that too in the supply of operation and maintenance spares, with a conclusion that the equipment that is being supplied to the company should have a kind of minimum average availability of 85% at every time, and the spares that should be supplied by them should be for 5 years, maintaining this kind of availability. There are a lot of rules and regulations for this because we have the technical manpower and we have sufficient money to buy, and we do buy equipment on regular basis. So after deliberations, all the OEMs internationally, nationally have come to a conclusion. Initially, there were a lot of challenges or hiccups because predicting components requirement for 5 years and maintaining the average availability of the equipment at 85% at the site was very difficult. So apart from that, taxation issues were there, import issues were there, and all these connects. However, after certain kind of experience, all have agreed, and then we have framed, like KPMG's as management help, we have framed the total tender document in such a way that we compare the quality product. Because whenever we buy the OEM equipments, all the specifications will be different for different people, and we cannot really come to a conclusion. So making a generalized specification itself was a challenge. After making the generalized specification, we said that the equipment cost along with the operation maintenance spares, and now we have a challenge that how we can compare the different offerers. So we put a cost cap that they can quote whatever they want to quote, but in the 5 years of service agreement which they will have to maintain the vendor managed complete inventory along with electrical and mechanical engineer there, and we will be giving the equipment for servicing there. Based on the recommendations of them, we will be changing the spares on the equipment. So this started, and the cost cap has really worked, and some persons started taking the cost cap in a totally in 1 or 2 years. But the condition was that in case if the cost cap is over, then they will have to supply all the spares on free of cost basis. With this as the basic fundamental, a new operation of procurement of equipments has started with operation maintenance spares with cost cap. This is a notable change which has taken place and it is successfully working. So there is a formula for finding out the availability of the equipment. Every day the equipment's condition-based monitoring system is being done. The engineers recommend the spares that are to be changed or whatever has to be done, and thereby we take the material from their depots which are there in the vicinity of the project itself, and we go ahead and we pay to them on monthly basis based on the consumption of the space and all that. This went for all the units where technical manpower was there. And the second kind of a notable change we made is similar to the operation maintenance space with cost cap, we have defined it as maintenance and repair contract. In such of the mines where we don't have the technical manpower, but we want to mine and increase the production, we now, in this case, the availability is also fixed at 85% for 8 years of operation of the equipment, and the complete maintenance sheds, maintenance personnel, maintenance technical people, they will have to organize themselves, and for that also we are prepared to pay the cost for each of that. So at the time of procurement of equipment, the cost comparison is done in the first case with cost cap of operation maintenance spares and the equipment. In the second case, mark with the operation with the maintenance spares as well as the maintenance and repair contract for the 8 years of operation. And there was some kind of a regulation that in case if the availability falls below the accepted and stipulated conditions in the this thing, below 75% availability, the machine has to be taken back by the manufacturing company, and then he has to give new machine. Otherwise, between 75 to 85% of availability, there is a penalty conditions for every 1% drop of performance availability. There will be 1% penalty to this thing. So now over a period of time, last few years, we are very much established, and now our inventory carrying cost has reduced. We take only thing which is recommended by them, and being a cash-rich company, we buy a quality product, because maintaining an average availability at 85% for even the manufacturer, until unless he gives a good equipment, it cannot be maintained in such a way. So these two notable points have made the availability of the equipment, and later on this indirectly led to increase in production because machines were always available, and even the new mines where technical manpower was not there, those mines also started producing. And from in last 10 years, if you see, from say 20 million tons to we have moved to 40 million tons. This is a from procurement angle, from materials management angle, this has helped the organization in having a notable structure. Apart from this, we used to even maintenance of the some kind of a activity also we have outsourced. Say example, we need to change the tires for a 100-ton dumper. Earlier, local internal staff used to do it. As I said, the company started in 1958. Now 60 years are over. All the people who are there were retiring and superannuating and all those things. By giving outsourcing, we are reducing the cost of the manpower, as well as we are getting a efficient changeover policy, because the private managements which do operation maintenance space, they get money out of the whole thing. For our interest, the procurement levels are very, very, very low. It is around say 500 to 600 crores a year. But our production, our values of turnovers are very high. In the third case, we have mines where even overburden was not removed, but we have mines on our name. There, what we have adopted the principle of MDO concept, that mine developer and operator concept. Those guys are required to get on and give the material to us at the on tonnage basis, and then we will go ahead with this. And as usual, everybody are aware, for all the items which are regularly used, where ordering time has to be reduced, we have rate contracts, we have depot agreements where vendor himself will put all the parts in our store and monitor it. We have MOUs with respect to all important infrastructure manufacturing items like steel and cement, apart from all the petrol and diesel, which is a major consumable item for running a mine. These are the notable changes, and as we have been seeing that due to pandemic, lot of things have suddenly come up. The role of a procurement manager, the materials manager, the supply chain manager, not only as every country in the world, and also especially Honorable Prime Minister used supply chain management 17 times in his speech and all that. And with the new changed atmosphere of working from home, and also the security, cyber security and risk management, this thing, we are into now not only into ERP and also working on data collection and data analytics in order to give a better performance for the whole industry to grow and see that there are no hiccups in maintenance or breakdown or not having the equipment available for working. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Thank you. You have got the ball rolling. You have set the context for the rest of the discussion. So, what I take out from what you've said is that supply chain or supplier partnership, has been a great tool in your armory to achieve, business continuity, to achieve competitive edge, because that is what I take out from what you have discussed, that, this strong supplier partnership with OEMs, with maintained SLAs and all have been a shift in the procurement practices that you have witnessed in your organization. And then you touched upon that how it was there maybe, but how pandemic has more thrusted upon this need of having data visibility, spend visibility through automation, and how data analytics is evolving to be one of the very important tool for a procurement manager. So that was wonderful, Mr. Kumar. That was wonderful. So I move to my next speaker, Mr. Srinivas. Mr. Srinivas, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah,
Mr.
you are.
Srinivas? Okay, great. Mr. Srinivas, unlike Mr. Kumar's experience, you belong to an industry where you are directly feeding to your production team to bring out products which are consumer goods. So we can safely say that production is your immediate client. Okay. So then we would appreciate the fact that production is always asking for quality and time. And however, you on the procurement side also have to balance the cost angle. So may I ask you, how have you been able to manage these three sides of triangle, this cost, quality, delivery? And if it has been a challenge, how have you been able to overcome this challenge and deliver all those three sides of the triangle day in, day out? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's an excellent sharing of experience by Mr. Preetham. Thank you very much, sir. It's a lot of insights to us. It's a great experience to be here in this. And coming to a question, Atanu, how do we balance the cost, quality, and delivery? This is something that we have to do unless and until you have complete hand in glove with the production and the sales. This is something feat which cannot be achieved. So I would say that the first and the most important thing for a CPO is to have this coordination, and then ensure that there is a proper alignment between the sales, production, and himself, his own department of procurement. Today the sales are actually going, he will come back, it's completely market driven. Whatever is there yesterday as a great potential, today is no more, it is said as obsolete. So one of the most important things when you have to manage the cost is to manage the vendors. So what I mean, what we were doing is actually to identify who are the core vendors who needs to be there. They are no more called as vendors, but we call them as actually partners. So we explain them our business process, we explain them our business dynamics, and we get into an agreement with them which states that yes, I would be needing this particular set of material, and they have to maintain certain amount of demand risk stocks with them, and they actually do certain amount of risk planning for themselves. These are the advantage with a core vendor when you actually differentiate like that is he ensures from his end saying that there will be an availability of the material so that you actually bring it to the production as and when there is a raise in the demand or when there is a requirement of the demand. Second, from our end we give a commitment stating that okay, fine, if I'm not able to take it within the desired timelines which I committed to you, I am going to take this within a particular period. Typically if a month within a month if you're not able to take, or then the month which you have actually committed to the vendor, if you're not able to take, we say that okay, I will at least lift this stock within this quarter, you manage it. So so there would be the core vendor stocks we always used to manage that way. And then because we actually give a core vendor a certain amount of a disproportionate share of procurement, we actually manage the cost in a much better way. We give him a commitment and then we manage the costs. We bring down the cost by giving the quality or the quantity issues. What we also did is we also just to ensure that they maintain the quality even in spite of having the raised qualities, we used to actually have a proper quality checks which is done by a third party within their production departments. And when during the production, these people used to do an online quality checks. In our industry, it's extremely important that you have very good quality. There cannot be any compromise. You cannot have a a typical I would say a screen manufactured with dust actually sitting on it, right? It is not possible. So you actually need to have a completely there is no question of any compromise on the quality. It has to be a certain standards, it has to be certain standards. So to bring them to those certain standards and their process, we had to get involved along with them in the production process, give them instant feedback, ensure that we actually check their every batch is checked, and then we bring them up to certain standards by using these parameters. That's how the qualities are taken care. We work with the vendors, and then we actually rather the partners, and then we used to ensure that the qualities are maintained right at the production level. So once these two are actually achieved, the third part is actually the delivery, which is actually the most important. So what we used to do is actually, as far as the deliveries are concerned, we used to have a certain risk stocks which are actually kept at our end. If there is an import or a long lead time items, we always used to ask the vendor to maintain certain stocks, and then we used to give certain stocks if it is relating to imports or something like that. We used to actually get them and then store it as a customs release bonded warehouse. In a bonded warehouse, we used to actually we used to keep it there, and we used to take disproportionately longer payment periods with the vendors for these kind of stocks. Whenever there is a utility or whenever there is a utilization of these particular stocks, we used to have an arrangement to make a back-to-back payments to them. Otherwise, after a certain period, let's say about 6 months later, we used to have a payment period. So the delivery part was maintained from, we managed like that using again a vendor partner, and then asking him to maintain certain stocks with himself. And if it is a long lead time item for the transits, we used to get it and then we used to maintain in the customs port as a warehousing or a bonded warehousing requirement, so that our inventories doesn't get piled up. And the quality we used to maintain from the by using a constant checks on the vendors. The cost is something which obviously every day we have to actually reduce the cost in electronics. What you pay yesterday, you will never like to pay today. That's how the electronics work. But that's a part and parcel of our business, and so we had to deal with it through the volumes only. Our business is volumes, and that's how we actually deal with it. So with all this, the most important impact, some of the things that we also did is, like Mr. Preetham was telling, we really understood what is our core competencies as a business and what is the core competencies of our vendors. Some of the process we actually literally outsource to them because they do it better than us. So it is important that when you are actually in a business, we need to understand what is our core business, and then we need to stick to that, and we need to we need to see how we improve that particular part. And then we actually have to outsource or give away the businesses of the other parts. This, in fact, has been fantastically displayed by telecom sector in India, where they outsource the complete tower or maintenance part, or the cell sites maintenance, back to the various other companies. They form the companies, they made it separate, and then they are managing it. There's a whole lot of advantage of synergy. In the earlier days of the telecom, actually people used to have their own towers. Idea used to have their own towers. Airtel used to have their own towers and things like that. There used to be competition even in terms of there was no sharing of towers. But today, because they formed an independent company, that company became very competitive. They started giving the towers on rental basis to various companies. So what happened is that it itself became a core competency. It has been developed, and that is not the competencies of the telecom company. A telecom company is to provide the best of the services, not maintenance of the towers or installation of the towers. So that way the shift actually happened. This is what, in fact, most of the people are, I mean, maybe the industries are actually learning and doing. That actually they are shifting away. They are sticking to their core competencies and then giving away the parts which are not very important to them, or where they are identifying the core competence who are actually there outside the market, and then they are giving it away. So again, there is a great amount of cost saving because of that also, which actually would ensure that on demand you get a service and you pay only when you use them. So these are some of the ways we actually manage the costs, and we ensure that we deliver the requirements of our internal customers. That's how we do it.
Great, Mr. Srinivas. Uh, from whatever you said in the last 5 minutes, the most important thing, if I have to mention it as a skill set of a procurement manager that he should be having, is that he should be having the skill to befriend people, to be friends with people, because you need to be friends. The way you are working, you need to be the best friend with your production and sales guys. Okay, you need to be the best friend with your supply partner. And there is a commitment running, in both ways, in both the directions. Like, it's a commitment from you to sales, it's a commitment from sales to you, it's a commitment from you to your supply partner, it's a commitment from supply partner to you. Am I right, Mr. Srinivas?
Absolutely, bang on.
And the second point that it's very heartening to hear from you, as you said, that quality is not to be compromised. Right now we have a dilemma, as I started off saying, that is customer delight taking a backseat to low cost sourcing. But good that you again dismiss this dilemma that no, quality is uncompromising. And the third important point, other than the other methodologies that you have, I'm not getting into it. The other important thing that you have mentioned, which is a great takeaway, is that the trend of procurement focusing on getting to the core. You be with your core functions, with your core processes, and which are not core to you, outsource them. And that way, even if it's an additional cost at a certain point of time, it's a long-term cost advantage and a long-term competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Srinivas, I trust I summed it up good enough for you, the way you wanted it to communicate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so we move on to Mr. Sareen. Mr. Sareen, you have been all in all into projects, and when I say projects, it's the projects. So it's not, it's like projects like metro rail, heavy projects, heavy engineering, infrastructures, and all such. So bringing that into perspective and having that as a context, my again candid question to you, in this project landscape, is savings, the way savings we know, still holds a pole position, or other factors who are taking precedence? One. The next part, I would urge you to also let us know that whether the notion of cost is different in a project landscape vis-a-vis a pure manufacturing setup or not. And if it's different, how is it different? Thank you, Mr. Sareen, over to you.
Okay, Atanu, how much time I have? Because I'm conscious of the overall time. Should I answer it briefly? Because it's a huge subject, cannot be
Yeah,
answered in one time. But you
yeah,
have to give me some guidance on the time.
yeah. But take 10 minutes.
Okay. So I think we got wonderful insights from both Preetham and Srinivas. Of course, these are views from the trenches. I mean, practical insights, and I can relate to it. Though I am in from the project background, and my career has been on whether on procurement or on construction aspects, it has been on the project side. But I think the similar principles apply to the project space as well. Cost is important. Cost is the bottom line. Anybody who's doing work or doing business or constructing project, the main objective is to get the bottom line. And I'm talking from a contractor perspective. Even from a public sector perspective, there is a budget, and Mr. Preetham would relate to me. There is a technical committee, and technical committee approval and administrative approval are taken before the tenders are awarded. So within that cost, the procurement has to be done. So cost is absolutely important, but there are other factors also which are equally important. And with time, there is a lot of significance attached to these factors. Without getting into too much of details, I will list these factors and maybe explain them in a little bit of little briefly. One is, of course, the procurement efficiency. So while the cost of procurement is important, how much time, money you can save by doing a low cost procurement. But I think procurement efficiency is as important a factor, and simply because the time to deliver a project, I'm talking from a project background, time to deliver a project is significantly dependent upon how fast or how quickly you can procure either the material, the plant and machinery, or the labor to do the project. When we provide consulting to our clients, we always use this KPI, which is called cost of delay per day. So any 1 day of delay in a project cost a contracting company or a project owner a certain set of money. Everybody wants to do the project on time or before time, right? So this procurement efficiency becomes a very important KPI. Under procurement efficiency, of course, there are various factors like strategic sourcing. So you have your vendor base developed and you have these long-term relationships developed so that you can quickly source. The procurement cost is also lower if you do strategic sourcing. Then there is a lot of emphasis in project space as well. And I'm sure it is the same in the case of the operational asset or a manufacturing setup, where there is a lot of emphasis on vendor management, which means you understand, you have relationship with the vendors, you have developed some kind of a partnership approach, which Mr. Srinivas was talking about, right? You keep a record of their past performances so that immediately once the project comes and when you have to order, you are immediately able to order it to the select vendor, right? Governance and technology under procurement efficiency plays a very big part, right? And there is a lot of action in the technology space and how you streamline your processes, which is the governance aspect. So procurement efficiency definitely is a big factor. The other factors, and they are broad factors. For example, in today's time, resilience and business continuity becomes very important. We just came out of this pandemic. Hopefully, we have come out of this pandemic, right? There is this geopolitical issues. China, people are now using China plus one strategy where they are looking at alternative sources so that if there is, say, dependence on China can come down, right? So you should have a resilience built into the organization, and that factor is very important when you are looking at procurement as a function. The other factors is, of course, the agility aspects. So one, I talked about the efficiency, the other is the agility aspects, which means that times are changing. You have these climate change issues, ESG, a lot of changes happening with time, and because of either statutory issues or because of cost issues. material issues, right? So agility of an organization plays a very important role, and the procurement invariably and your effectiveness, not efficiency, but effectiveness will also depend upon the agility of an organization. Then getting into some brass tacks, commercial terms and conditions that you agree with the vendor, risk allocation between the vendor and the buyer, or the supplier and the buyer. Risk allocation with using principles like the person or the party which can best address the risk should take it in his scope. So that's risk allocation. If it is done appropriately, payment terms are such that you don't load it on the vendor, where the working capital becomes a huge issue, especially for smaller vendors, right? These are also equally important. The other aspect which a lot of these companies are doing is looking at the value of money for procurement, value of money objective to look at procurement, which means that they look at either the life cycle cost when you're procuring an equipment or a material, or they are looking at the total cost of ownership. And Mr. Preetham talked about NMDC. So there is this concept which is being now discussed, where total cost of ownership for HEMM is being looked at. And in fact, we are doing some kind of consulting with them. Yesterday, I was there with the MD, and I was exchanging this before the meeting also, where we are also looking at should the procurement be only based on L1 cost, or should it be based on the life cycle cost of the equipment, including the maintenance cost and operation cost? Because those are, if you look at the cost aspects, capital cost is this much, whereas the operation cost and the maintenance cost is much more over the life of 15 years of an HEM. So these are some of the factors which I think are important over and above the cost, which is usually the biggest factor, but it is changing with time. Yeah, Tanu.
Hi. So, on a humorous note, if I have to give prime importance to procurement in projects, we might say that, even though the bridge doesn't come up, we need to ensure that the cost and time doesn't come up. So it is just like that, the cost and time is of paramount importance, and we have to take care that that doesn't shoot or deviate much. So yeah, we got this point clear from you, Mr.
The bridge will never come up. If the cost and time, the bridge will never come up. That's the point.
Yeah. So it is of that importance. So you spoke very important things in terms of how the organization needs to shape up. We have been talking about demands, we have been talking about procurement priorities, but how have we to shape up in terms of handling those demands? And also you spoke about resilience, you spoke about agility, you spoke about flexibility, which is so true, and that actually determines an effective procurement organization from a not so effective procurement organization. And then, as I think Mr. Preetham also touched upon it, and you elaborated it on again, or maybe you corroborated the fact again, that value for money, or the TCO, or the total cost of ownership, becomes very important when you are handling buys which has a capital cost which is of 20%, but operational cost takes the crux of it, which might be 80%, where looking at the cost structure in a different way becomes imperative. Am I right, Mr. Sareen?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. While
it is not. Okay, continue. Sorry.
No, Mr. Sareen, I'm done. Mr. Sareen, I'm done.
I'm conscious of the time, so please continue. I will maybe during the question and answer round elaborate on some of these things.
Oh, okay, great. Now, before I shoot my next questions for another round with my speakers, may I request the audience members to start thinking and type their questions in the chat box so that I'm able to see, and we'll try our best to take a few questions from there on for the speakers. Please start typing these questions here, and we'll try our best to take few of the question in terms of its eligibility and the quality of it. Thank you so much. So, since Mr. Sareen, you have the inertia of motion and had been talking, so I go anti-clockwise now, and I start off with the next question to you, which is very critical now, very critical in these days. that, having spoken everything, how do you see the role of technology nowadays, enabling these procurement managers, whether in a manufacturing space like Mr. Srinivas or in a project space like yours? How critical is technology in enabling procurement managers in meeting all those demands, whether it's of cost, quality, or delivery? What is the role of technology nowadays? How do you see that? Over to you, Mr. Sareen.
Yeah. So this is one area which is the most debated and discussed area, whether it is procurement, construction management, any sphere of life. Technology has become the central subject, right? Now, from a procurement perspective, I think the principles have to be very clear. The procurement, as I mentioned in my just a little while ago, speed, agility, right? Procurement efficiency, transparency, simplification of process, governance aspects, right? Looking at the past performance of vendors, having vendor management, vendor relationship. So these aspects have to be looked at, and that is where the technology comes into play. Technologies of today address exactly these issues which I was talking about. So whether you talk about the e-procurement or e-tendering, where now gone are the days when you used to submit 2,000 pages of documents, hard copy, 4 set of copies, give it to somebody, then somebody would do the evaluation, then it will go to the next table, it will go to the next table, right? There is not enough transparency built into the system, right? The trust factors are missing. So, for example, this e-tendering system, and not only in the private sector, but in the government sector, it is now something of a mandatory requirement, right? Similarly, from a cost reduction perspective, we are looking at spend analysis. There's huge tons of data which is getting generated, and we are using this advanced data analytics and AI to find out that how the spend is happening, where the cost has gone up, gone down, what is the past performance. So data analytics itself has become a huge area. And as people say, data is the new oil. In fact, it is not even a new oil, it is the new sun. It is so important, and how you manage that data is extremely important. Things around visualization, another technology which I've seen adopted in various organizations, where there is dashboarding, visualization, to slice and dice data in a meaningful manner and come out with some tangible understanding of where to spend, how, and in what way. What is the commercial model to be adopted? So that has become a huge area. Then things around sensors and variables, where you not only look at the procurement aspects, but post-procurement during the performance aspects, during the contract management phase. At that time, the sensors will play a big part. For example, HEMM, again, I'll take the example, what Preetham sir is saying. All the HEMMs today have these sensors for measuring the availability, utilization, right? We know vendor-wise what is the performance of various equipment, right? And there is no human intervention. It is all automatic. It gets in, the data gets recorded and sliced and diced, and you see that what's the performance of the vendors. And then you can decide your next procurement based on that. Because as I mentioned, the capital cost is this much, your O&M cost is this much. So you have to look at this factor when you decide your procurement. So there are many other vendor management, strategic sourcing. There's a lot of tools and these procurement platforms which are available. So technology is reshaping the way we do procurement in nutshell, right? And it is addressing all those aspects and all those principles which I was talking about in the beginning of my talk. Atanu, over to you.
Yes, Mr. Sareen. So, as you rightly said, data is not anymore the oil, but the sun. So data is all forms of energy now. And I think what you hinted at is you mentioned the tools, you mentioned the features, but if I have to take a leap forward and talk about the ultimate benefit is it is about empowering the procurement manager with data, with insights, so that he's sure about his decisions, he's confident about his decisions, and I mean, it's there. You have the technology today is empowering procurement managers. It's not only making their life convenient, but making them empowered, making them, you don't have to do it on hunch, but you do it on data. So yeah, we understand and we appreciate that, but this is something which we also feel day in, day out. Thank you, Mr. Sareen, for putting this perspectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now in a phase where we are going to take a few questions from the audience panel. Okay, so let me ask this first audience question aimed towards Mr. Srinivas. Mr. Srinivas, the question, I'll reframe the question a bit, which has come from the audience is, we are talking about strategic savings, and there is another element of savings, which is negotiated savings. Okay. So, what in nowadays with technologies being there, with various things evolving, what do you think are the best possible methodologies of getting negotiated savings, and what is the best negotiation strategy that is up the sleeves of a procurement manager? I think that's a question that has come from the audience panel. It interested me, and so I'm shooting it to you, sir. So for your views, please. Mr. Srinivas, I think you are on mute, maybe?
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. I'm on mute.
No problem.
Sorry. So I'm saying it is one of the best timed questions after talking about the technology to discuss further and as an extension. There's no doubt. In fact, savings, whatever we talked about 20 years back or what we are taking now, is completely different, and it is being viewed differently. Today, if you want to talk about the savings, you should first filter out all the typical regular manual efforts that we used to do earlier through e-auctioning and various other digital processes that we need to implement as a standard. For example, today, no more you can say that, by taking 3 quotes and then again renegotiating, that could be the best possible negotiations. And just because you discuss with the person manually and then bring down the cost, you can't call it as negotiated savings, because the sources of procurement is now extremely high. The numbers are becoming unlimited. Borders are no more restricting, right? Anybody can quote from any part of the world. So the first and the foremost thing that we need as a part of a process is to digitize our entire procurement process, and then first do the the negotiation on an e-auction basis, get the pricing, and then understand what is your L1, L2, L3, understand what are your outliers, understand how the costs are actually moving. This will help to ensure that who are your vendors and what is their competencies, and how far actually they can give you a better price. It also helps us in saving our energies when we are negotiating, because it's a huge energy consuming process. Negotiation is also a huge energy consuming process. So we actually have to ensure that the first level of negotiation is done through digitization process, and ensure that there is an internal competition which is put across the vendors. You also could able to reach to the maximum number of vendors using the digital platforms, and then decide who are the partners with whom you would like to work, and then sit with them and then understand what exactly are the further negotiations that you need to do in terms of the cost, or in terms of actually the volumes, or in terms of the timelines, lead times, various other process. I mean, somehow it is very difficult for me to say that the cost savings is only from reduced price. No, a cost saving is also will come to us from the an extended credit period. The cost saving will come when when a vendor is able to deliver to me in shorter periods of time, because my operating cycles can be reduced, right? These are some of the costs which can never be ascertained just like that. We need to have a proper processes to ensure that we calculate these things, and then we actually put it on a plate. So negotiated savings, if you ask me, uh, first is digitization. Get the digitization done immediately. That is the bare minimum ask. If you are not, then I mean, that is a base qualification, actually, base qualification, I should say, for a negotiator. And then sit with them, understand what exactly are their internal process, what exactly are their volumes that they can actually give us, and how could they scale up, how can they actually ensure that they don't let us down at the time of rate, how can they ensure reduce our loss of sales. These are all some of the factors that we need to consider as a procurement guy. Today it is not just only the negotiated savings. So
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Srinivas. It's been elucidated so well that I'm sure the audience panel have written down as an SOP and is going to start using it from tomorrow. It was wonderfully mentioned and articulated. Thank you so much, Mr. Srinivas. Okay. There's another question which is interesting, but I think it has already been answered. When somebody is asking supplier segmentation and supplier engagement can be considered as a procurement cost optimization strategy, and my answer to audience panel, yes. I think Mr. Preetham Kumar, Mr. Srinivas, Mr. Sareen had all answered to that. Yes, supplier partnerships and long-term strategic relationships are long-term goals for optimizing procurement cost. So I take another question from the audience panel, and I reframe it a bit to align it to the area of Mr. Preetham Kumar. Mr. Kumar, hope I'm audible.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. The question that we want to ask you, the audience members, including me, needs to ask you is that you are from a Navratna company, NMDC. Where it's an understatement to say that transparency, governance, compliance are major ask. I just want to know, it's my curious mind asking that whether ever in your life you have hit a crossroad where you had to make a balance or a choice between governance and then time and cost. And if you have ever hit that crossroad and had that challenge, how have you managed that? And it would be great to hear from you, and the budding procurement professionals would take that as a best practice or a leading practice. So your views, how do you balance this crossroad?
As you rightly said, we are in a forum where we are in a public sector company. We are governed by all the rules and regulations of the Government of India, Public Procurement Act, and also the various acts which come into MSME Act, and many other things are there. So for each of the different kinds of items, we have a very different kinds of procurement actions which can be rendered. As the public procurement policy itself says that we should be transparent totally. There is nothing like anything hidden. And it should be fair enough with all the people who are the stakeholders in the total procurement process. And we should give equitable treatment irrespective of whether the vendor is a big vendor or a small vendor, or what kind of a vendor, known vendor, unknown vendor, and all that. And we are also bound to be accountable for every action we take over a period of procurement process, whether the value is of a small value or a big value or big value, whatever it is. As you are already aware that NMDC also has put up a steel plant of 3 million tons per annum at Jagdalpur, Nagarnar, wherein we have done 22,000 worth of 22,000 crores procurement we have done. So in various segments, we take various actions for that matter. Point number is transparency without saying our all tenders are on the total. Earlier, we used to put it on paper, newspaper, tender documents here and there, send it to all across the world, to all the embassies and whatnot. But after the improvement of the technology and also the all the tools which are available, we are going through global tendering system, open tendering system, or limited tendering system, or single tendering system, or proprietary based procurement, everything through the portal. So the people are aware that what we are doing. And the beauty of our tender document is whatever we say in the tender document, we do that. And whatever we do, we say in the tender document. There is nothing else which can be not transparent more than this. If it is a global tender, the challenges are there, because once we want to buy a bigger equipment, in order to bring everybody at par, we need to really have the pre-qualifying conditions. So designing a pre-qualifying conditions for an equipment to bring all the people into the same platform or what we require, what our technical specifications may require. So once somebody meets that, it is equal opportunity. If somebody gives more technology or less technology we cannot adopt, more okay, it is equal to the one what we sought for. In limited tender inquiries, as I said little while ago, because the quality of the product is very, very essential. Any pain in the quality or any disturbance or breakdown in the quality of the product will have a huge impact. Assume a conveyor belt which is running and producing say 20 million tons of ore handling, and suddenly it snaps and gives break, it's breakdown. Then we need to almost spend 20 to 30 days just to remove that conveyor belt of say 600 meters, 800 meters or 1000 meters and bring it back. The whole production will go up. So the quality becomes a paramount importance in this thing. So at that point of time, we carefully take the management's approval not to encourage or involve people who are not meeting the quality. We have past experience. As I told you, we are a company of almost 60 years, and every 5-10 years we know what are the performance of the major manufacturers where major components are there. Like major components can be conveyor belts, OTR tires, Tricon rock roller beads, and many other spare parts which are required. The spare parts management I have already explained you in the operation and maintenance space, where now a lot of good quality. As I told, as KPMG was telling, that once availability of the equipment is there, utilization is improved. Once utilization is improved, production is improved. Once production is improved, turnover is improved, and company is doing MOU excellent for last continuously 10 years, and anybody can judge on that. So these public procurement, wherever components which are there of maybe a little where we need to give to the new MSME Act, where some 20% of our requirement has to be given to them also, and to fulfill where large industry and small industry is competing, there are rules and regulations when we can plus 15% we give equal opportunity to them and ask them can they match up with the lowest offerer who has given techno-commercially acceptable. Whenever I say lowest offerer, it is techno-commercially acceptable offer, only lowest offer. It's not that anybody who quotes is the lowest offer here. Having done so, we promote them. We also promote SC, ST amongst the 20% for 4% of them, and also women entrepreneurs. We have database, the technology is helping us in getting. We go on vendor empanelment, vendor development, vendor association with each one of us at every point of time. We go to various places and say that these are the requirements of NMDC. Kindly come forward and see in case we are a women entrepreneur, SC, ST entrepreneur, and all these things. As you rightly said, the challenge comes when something has to be given. Time-bound projects are there. Literally, there is a time bound. I take an example. I was also involved in procurement of say 500 crores of raw material for a one spot project, and which is linked to initiating a Cocoa 1 or Cocoa 1 battery, whatever you call, in the steel plant. Then the whole problem comes up that how to meet these challenges of government public procurement as a. So here the pre-qualifying condition, which is designed by debating with across the industry, across the suppliers, will play a key role in getting a correct supplier source and then finalizing. And for finalization purposes, as Mr. Srinivasan said, technology tools are there for small components. Even now mixing AI with ML and robotics also can place a real order, smart contracts and all that. Coming back to technology, we are using your platform and as well as others' platform for sometimes on e-reverse auction basis among the techno-commercially acceptable offerers, or sometimes tender come e-reverse auction basis, because after the e-reverse auction is over, we can open the tender initially. Somebody should not take us for granted. This also satisfies the negotiation which we need to do very, very, very transparently, because negotiation itself is the breeding ground for corruption in many of the public sectors. That itself wherever is there. And it is already said negotiation means win-win situation. It can never happen. Dada will be dadagiri karega or chota wala bach jayega. So in order to do that, we don't even interact, because even eye-to-eye contact has been avoided in all respects. It is through systems, through transparent, over and above this also, we have integrity monitoring managers. We call IEMs, independent external monitors, who are given by the vigilance department and all the. So in a public sector procurement, vigilance is always around you, whether you like it or not. This
Yes,
will be
true.
there. So if you see the NMDC's performance, not even a single case you can show it there where there was some kind of a complaint or some kind of a this thing. As Raj Singh was saying, we are excellent company wherein you can walk around, talk to people across the table, have friendship, partnerships, not only on the business front. I believe in friendly front, because a lot of things, when I want a material urgently, it comes because of me, not because of the systems which are available in the system. So like that, we have procured coking
Great.
coal for the organization in a way. Then
Mr.
I don't know whether I have crossed. I mean, I'm within
No,
your
no,
query or not. Like,
no, so
yeah.
it's okay. But no, if you have any other very important perspective, please share. Otherwise, we got the viewpoint that you wanted to share. So anything else?
Many a times when we go for global tender inquiries, the challenge is when we want the performance to be, I mean, given in the sometimes bigger procurements we do through expression of interest route. That means we invite people for a project, then we assess them, and then we go for tender for only those people who have qualified this thing. Second challenge, many a times it happens is when global tender inquiries are there, when the certificate that they give it towards meeting the performance, we will not be in a position to this thing. Example, say China gives a performance certificate that in one of the steel plants his equipment is working. We cannot really go through that and we cannot vouch. So over a period of debate, what we have said is, if it is in the same country, we cannot accept that as the performance certificate. It should have been at least internationally supplied. And the second challenge comes in each of the equipment is of a different family, different item. So how many quantities should be working? That also comes into picture. So if any of the attendees here can go through the tender documents, because in these 10-15 minutes I cannot explain everything which is there in the tender document, nor it is possible to express all thoughts in one stroke. We can always interact. So what I want to say is, they can see how the basically the PQC, pre-qualifying condition, is designed both for technical part of it and commercial part of it. And till date, all people are happy with NMDC in all the procurement that are being going on. That is our forte, I can say so. And I being part of the family of NMDC, I'm too happy with it. Yeah.
Great, Mr. Kumar. I think you encapsulated everything at the very first when you say everything that you do is in the tender and everything that you put into the tender is the only thing that you do.
That's it.
I think that encapsulates everything about your commitment to governance and all, and how digitization and all are helpful, how the vigilance processes have been enablers and helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And there's a great takeaway. Thank you so much. So we have near the end of this webinar. So I just sum it up. I have been summing it up, but just I'll take one more minute to sum it up. Is that it has been great, thought-provoking session, and my sincere thanks to all the three speakers. What if I have to note down 5 points which have emerged very strongly today, very strongly, is that long-term supplier partnerships, the total cost of ownership concept, outsourcing of non-core activities. Okay, then automation is invaluable for empowerment of procurement managers, and obviously data, which is no more only an oil but all forms of energy. I think these are the few points which we need to take up, but there are various other points which I have been summing up. But at the end, I thought that I'll sum up these 5 points. And before saying my final thanks and bidding goodbye to all of you here, I just have a curious question, which is in alignment to this, it's not to be answered. I just put it as a thought at the end of it, in alignment to the topic that we have. And because that we are ending, financial year end, where our appraisals might start just after. So I was just having a thought, like, does a procurement manager get a promotion for getting savings or getting efficiency? So let's have a thought on this, and maybe we'll discuss again after some time. Okay, I think that is what I leave a thought before we say goodbye, and thanks to everyone until for the 12th webinar when we meet again. Thank you, Mr. Sareen. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Thank you, Mr. Srinivas. You people in the midst of so much of things have come and joined us. It's been wonderful session, and thanks to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you.